Hey everyone, Ranger here, and I am back again doing my second art video showcase. It's been a little while since I've done my first one, but here I am doing another one and showing you the process of how I made this piece. And this piece in particular, I call it M for Peace. Now going over the general idea of this piece. So as you can tell, this is of course based on one of my favorite Godzilla monsters, Gigan, as represented here. This is the movie Monster Series Showa figure. So, yeah, so the time I made this piece is significant. I made it last year in 2022, which is the 50th anniversary of Godzilla vs. Gigan, meaning it's Gigan's debut year, in a sense. So, around the time, there were plenty of merchandise here and there celebrating, the 50th anniversary. So, I wanted to do my, more or less my own contribution to the Gigan's 50th anniversary, as he is one of my favorite monsters in the Godzilla series. I think his design is pretty ridiculous, but it's so charming at the same time, and he has a really sadistic character to him that makes him pretty memorable when compared to other monsters. So I definitely do enjoy the monster, and although I am definitely more of a fan of the Final Wars designs, I cannot deny how nostalgic and classy the original Showa design is with the, as you can see here on the figure, his green skin and golden scales. So when coming up with this piece, at the time I wanted to practice a little bit more on the on some of my leftover drawing pencils I have during my first year in drawing class, which was back in early 2021. So like I may mention this in my Rhinos of the Past video, is that I, with a lot of my personal art projects, is basically using leftover material I have from my classes over the years. So this is the same here, and I wanted to do a little bit of practice with a pencil and even a bit of charcoal actually. So going over on how I began sketching this. So basically the pencil I've used is, as I said, graphite. If the camera can focus in a little bit. So the lettering might be small, but what this says is General Pencil Co. Kimberly, and on this side it says the lettering is a bit smudged, but it says graphite pencil, and this is H scale. So what the H means is that drawing pencil come in different scales here, and so with H that would be typically a bit more lower shading. So you got H as I shown you, but there's 2H, 3H, 4H, 5H, and 6H. And then what's higher than H would be, if I can find a good example, this is known as 4B. So the B shades are typically a lot darker and richer. So we got typical B, but we also got 2B, 3B, 4B, 5B, 6B, 7Bs, and 8B. So a little bit more with the Bs because they provide a little bit more greater and darker shading. And in between H and B would be F, which is middle class, and then as a transition there's HB. So when initially drawing a Gigan here, I've used a lower class of H scale, I may have used, I think, H or 2H when initially sketching out Gigan's outline here. So before I came up with any other ideas I wanted in this piece, of course I need to sketch out Gigan first. So like I said, I started sketching out some of the proportions here around, designing Gigan here. So obviously I started sketching out, starting with, his hook-like arms, and probably one of the more difficult things when making this piece was sort of getting some of the proportions and angles right, particularly around the buzzsaw here, as if you can't notice, they do get a little bit smaller when it reaches this particular arm. To me, it may seem like a strange design choice, and it is a little in a sense, but given what I was capable of at the time, I would say that this is sort of the best I could have done back then. But it doesn't really distract too much from the overall flow the piece has, because the proportion on his arms and leading to his hook arms are pretty much well done. Now, as you'll see throughout the piece here, is that Gigan has different shadings when it comes to the pencils done. So basically, sort of more darker outlines are more or less outlining his body parts. In particular, his hook hands and the scales here. And the scales themselves have a much darker shading, most likely in the B scale. And some of the darker outlinings around Gigan is also B scale, but a much higher one, such as 6B. And this sort of shading goes all the way up until you reach, more of his skin area. And as the skin, I want to make it more or less in the middle, because what I mean by middle is not as dark as the scales here, and as you can see up here, his visor, but not too light when compared to when I've done his metal parts here, like the hook hands and his beak and spikes on top. And so, I chose a middle class, so typically around the lower B scale, like 2B and HB is what I chose. And as for the metal parts, such as the hook hands and his like I said, the beak and the spikes, they're more or less a lower shading, so they'd be in the lower H scale, except for around these parts around the hook, as I want to show a different gradual shading between them. And admittedly, I think this is one part of my piece that I would have changed. I think these lines here with these marked darker outlines between the tips of the hooks and the rest of them, I think it's a little too abrupt, especially when you compare it to this figure here, where it's a bit more traditional and a little bit more cleaner in a sense. So something I would have changed, but it's nothing too bothersome. Another thing I kind of would have liked to change would be more or less some of the how I shade some certain areas. Like at this distance, you can't really tell, but if you look at it up close, you can see where some shadings are a little bit heavier in certain areas, particularly around this back part of Gigan's head here. Something I would have liked to change, and as I didn't exactly notice it at the time, but it's something that you can't really notice unless you get really up close and personal with it. And And since I mentioned the visor, I used a similar shade such as the scales here. And this is where I also want to talk about a little bit about how I designed Gigan. This is obviously based on his Showa design here. But as you can see, there are some significant differences I made with my interpretation, most noticeably around the head. Gigan, as you can see here, represented by this figure, normally has more of a rounder design when it comes to like his snout area here. Like it's a bit more smoother in a sense. But when you're looking at the piece here, he's a bit more narrow-esque when it comes to his head design that I chose. And also I added a bit more teeth around the beak. And one important detail that I didn't add is the fact that Gigan has an extra visor above his main big red eye. I didn't add that in this piece, and you could say that's a little bit of a mistake, but to me, I kind of see it as just a design choice I made, because if I'm to be honest, I kind of find this part of Gigan design-wise just a little bit useless nowadays, because while he did had like a laser coming out of this eye in one poster of the movie, he of course didn't use it in the movie itself, nor in Godzilla vs. Megalon, and onwards his signature laser eyes, especially in Final Wars and in other media, he would shoot out his laser in his big main eye. So I do find that just a little bit odd in a sense. So it's something that, I'm not exactly bothersome by not adding this piece. So yeah, and if we can look at the head spikes here, they're also a little bit different, as I do believe they are just a little bit more squat down, just so I can make a little bit of room when sketching out the piece, as I want to use as much space as possible. And you could say it looks a little strange, but considering the space I was utilizing, I think it works pretty well in a sense. So yeah, so that was just me talking about when making the piece with Gigan himself, as I wanted him to be the first thing I wanted to do, as I want him to be sort of the main focal point. But another main focal point I made is the cockroaches in the background. Now, this is important if you know Godzilla lore, as in Godzilla vs. Gigan, the aliens in the movies were giant cockroaches, and sort of the main purpose in the movie is sort of seeking peace in a sense. I can't exactly remember it. It's something about how their dominant species on the planet basically eradicating themselves through pollution, and how it'll allow cockroaches like them to invade their own planet, stuff like that. Sort of homaging the current state of how planet Earth itself is sort of in a dire situation with pollution and all that. So that's basically the general idea of what they wanted to achieve in the movie, basically peace. Even though their form of peace is basically invading with their own giant monsters, with of course Gigan and King Ghidorah. So yeah, so of course the cockroaches play a significant role in the movie, and I want to somehow incorporate that into this piece here, as the cockroaches, I do see them depicted in some artworks on Godzilla monsters and all that. I wouldn't say they're too represented in a sense. So that's why I decided to choose is decided to add my own cockroaches in the background because, it connects with Gigan in a sense. So with the cockroaches in the background, I basically use something called, and this is kind of broken, as something called woodless charcoal pencil. And it's a bit blurry here, and apologies for not the greatest zoom in. And also the charcoal themselves can get a little dirty, but basically this woodless charcoal pencil helped me sketch out the cockroaches here, because charcoal in general provides a much deeper shades when compared to regular pencils and even drawing pencils. So, I knew that charcoal would be a pretty good candidate to depict the cockroaches, as, when people see cockroaches, they see them as ooh, icky or scary. So it kind of helps with the black coloring to achieve with these cockroaches that I wanted to do. That's what I decided to do, is sketch out these cockroaches with this charcoal pencil and basically outlining them. But I even use something called basically a blending brush here, used for charcoal here. Now these brushes here, and are they called brushes? Because I actually wrote a note here. Stumps. Actually, these blending stumps are designed to blend in a charcoal into like paper and stuff, and you can blend them as much as you can to get how dark you want them to be. And of course, I want the cockroaches to be as dark as possible. So, and it's just a one size, but these blending brushes come in different sizes. You can get a bit bigger one or a smaller one, and they usually come in sets. So these blending stumps help me. And one other charcoal material I use is I actually have a bag of charcoal right here, and these charcoal include the charcoal pens and these charcoal sticks here. And the one that I use the most is something called vine charcoals, basically natural charcoal, basically ground up. And the ground up charcoal is what I use on the blending stumps to shade in the cockroaches here, in order to blend in the cockroaches within the cockroaches black coloring. And the cockroaches designs themselves, they appear in different designs, and some cockroaches look a bit traditional, and others I want to do a little bit more creative takes, like maybe some of these cockroaches are more of a cross between other insects, like some of these you may see look a little bit like ticks, or some like I believe this one is based on like water bugs. So I wanted to play with different designs with my cockroaches, and immediately I really do like how a lot of these turned out. But I will say there is a little bit of inconsistencies, like this cockroach's antennae is looking kind of a bit down. I would have preferred if I were to put it a little bit up, and he just would have been just been hidden by Gigan's claw here. And I think another one would be, I think that's the only one that I probably would have changed, and probably this one too. This one also has, only part of its head, and the antennae is looking a bit droopy. So some of the cockroaches still look good for the most part. Others, I think I would have changed just a little bit in terms of like proportions and such. And another thing is how some of these are range in sizes, like you got bigger ones, smaller ones. But the smaller ones are used to, fill certain spaces in a piece, so there's no lack of emptiness in certain areas. And another thing I did was I also added in a bit of shading on one top of the piece with a slider shading with the charcoal to make it look a little bit more gray, and then it transitions a little bit into more or less not more lighter gray, and then this area right here in front of Gigan is more of a traditional gray in general. So those are like some of the shading the skills that I utilize throughout this piece, and how I designed to make this piece to really connect Gigan's basically origins to his connection with cockroaches in a sense. And another thing I added in the piece is this Japanese language, and it basically translates to for peace, which is in connection to, of course, the cockroaches talk in the movie about seeking peace in the movie. Now, one material I do find very important if you're looking into creating charcoal drawings and pencil drawings also is this spray-on called Workable Felix Tip. I probably butchered that name, but basically it's made by Carolyn, and what this material does is that it gently makes sort of a more or less a cover over the charcoal and pencil so that it protects it, because I'm sure if you guys noticed just by handling some of the charcoals from this bag here is that my fingers are a little bit smudgy. So if you can imagine, it can be a pain in the ass to make this piece as clean as possible and keep it clean for a long period of time without getting your hands dirty or basically anything dirty with charcoal. So how you basically use this spray is and also one tip about this spray is I do if you guys don't have like a big studio space or anything without open windows, I do recommend doing this tip outside, because you don't want to get nasty fumes into your body and stuff like that. So basically, if you can find anywhere good outside to place your piece in, like a table or something, then you basically would want to spray, and of course you want to shake it like using spray paint, and spray your charcoal or pencil piece like I did with Info Piece all over it so that it'll have protective sheen. You don't have to overdo it, as I would imagine that might do some damage with your charcoal or pencil, but just a simple spray on, all over the piece so that there's a cover for it so it can protect the charcoal and pencil over time. So yeah. And as for how much these material would cost, it varies. So, and luckily I do have a note for this. So basically the graphite pencil set, like I mentioned from Kimberly here, which is typically a graphite pencil set from them would cost around $8.49 to $12.23, and woodless the woodless charcoal pencils here, this one is also broken off, range in a set ranges from $6.99 to $10.38, and keep in mind these are just general sets that you could get. I'm not exactly talking about the most extravagant, most expensive sets containing these material, as not all of us have that much money to pay for really prestigious, really expensive art sets. And the charcoal sticks right here, like this set, like from them, comes from around $6 to $8.99, so close to $9. Charcoal sticks like this, they're a little bit more expensive, ranging from actually get their view here, and these are a bit more crumpled up over time. The charcoal sticks ranges from $9.79 to $25.64. So the charcoal sticks are a little more on the expensive side depending on how much you get, and that is mostly because these are like mostly natural sticks, so they're actually, you know, not exactly modified or something like that. They're legitimate charcoal. And then the blending stumps like this one here, and also in the set as these other ones here, and obviously you can tell they've been used over time. They can range from $8.99, $9 to $10.96, so you know, not too bad. And also one thing is, you know, when doing this piece is that of course I had to erase certain areas to make room for, you know, proportions and, you know, what I wanted to do better in certain areas. Price for just a simple set of high polymer eraser, which is a white eraser, is around $164, and the paper that I use on this piece is this 18-inch by 24-inch drawing paper. So you're looking about at least $23-32, and that's for the workable Felix itself. Right here, that ranges from $6.41 to $12. So the prices on these sets and materials themselves, they're of course not too expensive, unless if you want to go with the more general approach and things like that. So yeah, so I'd say the price ranges on, you know, what kind of material I use here is not too bad, honestly. And you know, if you're a college student like me, then you're given, you know, material lists on, you know, what you need to buy and stuff like that. So typically I don't find these prices all too bad, actually. So I think, you know, the price ranges on some of these are pretty fair for what you want to do. And, you know, if you want to go with the more general price ranges so that you don't break your wallet. So yeah. So I think that's all I want to cover for this video on my piece M4Piece. Overall, I'm really happy on how this turned out. You know, of course, based on, you know, one of my favorite Godzilla monsters, and you know, even though there are some changes that I would have liked to done throughout this piece, I'm still happy at how this turned out. I'm really proud that I did this as a celebration for, you know, Gigan's 50th anniversary. And I'm glad that I practiced a lot more on my charcoal drawing since then, because, you know, currently I'm in the works of another project involving a pencil and charcoal, and I think what I've learned from this piece is definitely applying to the next one I'm making. So I'm very happy on how it's turning out, and depending if I make a video for that one, who knows. So yeah, so this is just my general video on how I make this piece. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you got some insight of how, you know, I did this piece. And yeah, so I'll see you guys next time.